The mistake that will cost the Empire. The Galactic Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds. Their soldiers, known as the Crimson Legion, had never lost a battle. Every planet they attacked surrendered within days. Now they had discovered a new world, a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. Their scientists called it Earth. It looked weak. No great space fleet, no advanced technology. The Empire's leaders decided it would be an easy target. They sent Squad Alpha 9, a team of elite warriors, to attack a human base. Their mission was simple: capture the base and kill anyone who resisted. They had no idea they were walking into a nightmare. The landing. Squad Alpha 9 arrived at night. Their dropship landed silently in a dense forest near the human base. Cold wind blew through the trees, making the leaves whisper like voices in the dark. Captain Drell, the squad leader, activated his helmet scanner. The base was just ahead, a small metal structure with a few guards. Pathetic, he muttered. The squad moved forward. They expected fear. They expected humans to panic and beg for mercy. But something was wrong. The guards did not look afraid. They stood calmly, their eyes sharp and focused. Drell felt uneasy. His instincts told him something was off, but he ignored them. After all, what could a few weak humans do? The first mistake. Move in. Silent kills, Drell ordered. The squad split into teams. They crept through the shadows, plasma rifles ready. The first soldier approached a human guard from behind. Before he could strike, the human turned too fast, like he already knew the attack was coming. In one motion, the guard grabbed the soldier's arm and twisted. There was a sickening crack. The soldier screamed, "Contact! Contact!" The silent operation was over. Alarms blared across the base. The humans were not running. They were fighting back. Drell saw a shadow move on the roof. A sniper. "Cover," he shouted. Too late. The sniper fired. A single bullet. It pierced through 3 soldiers at once. Drell cursed. This wasn't supposed to happen. The second mistake. The squad fell back, taking cover behind a steel barricade. Plasma fire lit up the night. "Enemy count?" Drell asked, trying to regain control. His scout checked the radar. His voice shook when he answered. "Sir, the base had 10 guards before we attacked." Drell frowned. "And now?" The scout swallowed. "Still 10, sir. We haven't killed a single one." Drell's blood turned to ice. They had already lost half their squad. The humans, not one of them had fallen. The hunter in the shadows. A deep voice echoed through the base speakers. "Who sent you?" Drell hesitated. Who was speaking? This wasn't a normal human voice. It was calm and full of confidence. "This is Captain Drell of the Crimson Legion. Surrender, and we will spare your lives." There was a pause. Then, laughter. Not scared laughter. Mocking laughter. Then the voice spoke again. "You have made a mistake." A shadow dropped from the ceiling. Before anyone could react, 2 soldiers were already dead. The figure moved like a ghost, too fast to follow. Drell finally saw her, a woman in black combat armor. No fear in her eyes. She was the predator. They were the prey. Who are you?" Drell whispered. The woman smiled. "My name is Commander Rain, and you picked the wrong planet." The end of Squad Alpha 9. Panic took over. The remaining soldiers fired wildly. Plasma blasts burned through walls, but Rain was already gone. Then, a knife flashed in the darkness. A soldier screamed. Another fell. Drell knew then, this was no normal human. Retreat. Retreat. They ran. They never should have come here. But there was nowhere to run. The last thing Drell saw was red eyes in the dark. Then, silence. Final scene. The Empire received a distress signal from Squad Alpha 9. The message was cut short, filled with screams and static. Then, silence. A second squad was sent to investigate. They found the dropship, burned, empty, and in the middle of the base, a message was carved into the metal walls. Send more. The Empire had made a mistake, and Earth's deadliest weapon was waiting. The one they shouldn't have messed with. The silence that terrified the Empire. The Galactic Empire had ruled for centuries. They had conquered thousands of planets, wiped out entire civilizations, and crushed every enemy they had ever faced. And yet, for the first time in history, an entire squad had vanished. Squad Alpha 9 had been sent to capture a small human base on Earth. They never returned. At first, the Empire thought it was a mistake, maybe an equipment failure, a lost signal, or a storm interfering with their communication. But when they sent a probe to scan the area, what they found made their blood run cold. The base was still standing, untouched, no sign of an attack, and Alpha 9's dropship burned down to its skeleton. The Empire knew one thing for certain: something had gone horribly wrong. And so, they sent another squad. This time, it wasn't just any team. It was a recovery squad, trained to extract survivors, investigate threats, and, if necessary, eliminate them. They were ready for war. Or so they thought. Landing on the graveyard, Squad Theta 5 touched down at the same location as Alpha 9. Their transport ship hovered just above the forest as 10 heavily armored soldiers jumped into the darkness below. Captain Keln, the squad leader, activated his visor. Night vision engage. Stay sharp, he ordered. We don't know what we're walking into. His soldiers moved forward, weapons raised, scanning the area. Everything was too quiet. No animals, no wind, no sign of a battle. But the trees were marked with plasma burns. There had been a fight here. And the silence that followed, that was unnatural. The first discovery. Check the wreckage, Keln ordered. The squad approached the remains of Alpha 9's dropship. It was worse up close. The metal had been melted from the inside out. That wasn't normal. That wasn't human technology. What the hell did this? One of the soldiers muttered. Then someone found the first body, or what was left of it. The armor was intact, but there was no body inside. Just ash. Impossible, Keln whispered. Who could do this? The base is watching. They continued toward the human base. From a distance, it looked normal. Small, quiet, abandoned. No sign of battle. No broken walls. No bodies. Just a simple, silent base. It didn't make sense. But then, Keln's visor picked up movement. A shadow. Watching them. The soldiers raised their rifles. Identify yourself, Keln shouted. No response. Just a whisper. You should leave. The attack begins. Theta 5 did not leave. They opened fire, shooting at the source of the voice. But the bullets hit nothing. The shadow moved too fast. Then, a blade flashed. The first soldier went down before he could scream. Then the second. A third tried to run. Something pulled him into the dark. Keln turned around, heart pounding. His team, they were vanishing one by one. The enemy wasn't using guns. It was something else. Something worse. The legend of Commander Rain. And then Keln saw her, a figure in black armor, standing over the bodies of his men. Blood dripped from her blade. She didn't look tired. She didn't look scared. She smiled. Who are you? Keln demanded. The woman tilted her head. You don't know, she asked, amused. Keln clenched his fists. This was a human, a single soldier. A woman. How had she destroyed 2 elite squads? This is impossible, he muttered. She took a step forward. And Keln stepped back. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The final mistake. Fall back. Keln shouted. The remaining soldiers ran. They called for their ship, emergency evac. Evac now. Their pilot responded. Negative. Something's wrong. The engines won't start. The soldiers froze. The ship was dead. Their only escape was gone. Keln turned back to Rain, breathing heavily. She was still standing there, watching, like a predator studying its prey. "You should never have come here," she said softly. And then the lights in the base went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Keln never saw what happened next. Final scene. The Galactic Empire received another distress signal. They listened carefully. For the first few seconds, they heard gunfire, screams, static, and then a voice. Calm, confident, amused. "Send more." The message ended. The Empire was silent. They had just made the biggest mistake in their history, and Earth's deadliest weapon was waiting for them. The Empire's panic begins. The fear that spread across the stars. The Galactic Empire had existed for over 1,000 years. It had destroyed civilizations, erased entire species, and conquered countless worlds. It was an empire that knew only victory. But now, for the first time, it had encountered something it didn't understand. Not an army, not a fleet, a single human. And she had just made 2 of the Empire's elite squads disappear. The latest distress signal from Earth had been brief. Screams, gunfire, a voice at the end. "Send more." That message sent a wave of fear through the Imperial command. What had happened? Who was this enemy? And most importantly, how had a single human defeated their best warriors? The Empire had a rule. If a planet was weak, it was conquered. If it was strong, it was wiped from existence. Now, the Emperor had made his decision. Earth would burn. The warship Dominion arrives. The Imperial warship Dominion, a massive battle cruiser, was sent to Earth's orbit. Its mission was simple: turn the human base into dust. Captain Vorin stood on the bridge, staring down at the blue planet. He didn't believe in ghosts, myths, or stories of unstoppable warriors. He believed in firepower. "Charge the main cannon," he ordered. His officers obeyed. The ship's weapons locked onto the base. "Target acquired," the gunner confirmed. "Fire." The ship's cannons glowed as a blast of pure energy shot toward the planet. This was enough firepower to level an entire city. Nothing could survive it. But then, the impossible happened. The shot that never landed. As the blast approached its target, the ship's computer malfunctioned. The energy beam vanished. One moment, it was there. The next, gone. No explosion, no impact. Just nothing. "Report," Captain Vorin barked. The gunner scrambled. "Sir, the shot disappeared before impact." "That's impossible," Vorin growled. "Try again." The gunners fired a second shot. This time, the moment it left the ship, the blast reversed direction. The entire crew watched in horror as their own weapon turned around and shot back at them. "Shields!" Vorin screamed. The ship's shields barely activated in time. The blast struck, shaking the entire cruiser. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the control room. "Sir, someone hacked our systems," the engineer stammered. "Impossible," Vorin said. "Nobody can hack an Imperial warship from the ground." Then, for the first time, the ship's speakers activated on their own. A voice spoke. A calm, deadly voice. "Oh, I can do a lot more than that." The first signs of Rain's real power. The ship's lights flickered. Weapons deactivated. Every door sealed shut. "What's happening?" An officer shouted. Vorin tried to override the controls. Nothing worked. Their ship, one of the deadliest in the Imperial fleet, was now under someone else's control. Then, the airlocks opened. Oxygen began to vent into space. The crew panicked. Vorin gritted his teeth. "Shut it down." They tried. They failed. Then, on every screen in the ship, a face appeared, a human woman, with cold, calculating eyes. The same voice spoke. "You came to kill me. Now I'm inside your ship. How does it feel to be hunted?" The panic spreads. Within minutes, the ship's crew was gasping for air. They had no weapons, no control, no escape. The mighty Imperial warship was helpless. And then one last message appeared on the screen. "Leave now, or die here." The airlock slammed shut again. Oxygen levels stabilized. Captain Vorin coughed, catching his breath. He understood the message. She could have killed them, but she let them go. This was not an act of mercy. This was a warning. "Get us out of here," he ordered. The Dominion turned and fled. The most powerful empire in the galaxy had just been humiliated by one woman. And now, everyone would know. The Emperor's rage. News of the Dominion's defeat reached the Imperial capital within hours. The Emperor himself watched the recording. The battle. The silence. The final message. He clenched his fists. "A single human did this," he growled. His advisors were silent. No one had an answer. Then he spoke 4 words that shook the Empire. "Send the Black Guard." The Black Guard. The Empire's most ruthless assassins. They had never failed a mission. Now they had a new target. Commander Rain. Final scene. Back on Earth, Rain watched the sky. She knew the Empire wouldn't stop. She didn't want them to. She wanted them to keep coming. Because she had only just begun. A small smile played on her lips. Send more. And in the darkness of space, the Black Guard was already on their way. The hunt becomes the hunted. The arrival of the Black Guard. The Galactic Empire had never faced an enemy like this. First, Squad Alpha 9 had vanished. Then, the elite recovery team, Theta 5, suffered the same fate. Even the mighty Imperial warship Dominion had been forced to retreat, crippled, humiliated, and terrified by a single human. It was unacceptable. The Emperor was furious. The military commanders were in shock. The Crimson Legion had never suffered such a defeat. So, the Empire sent the Black Guard. They were not soldiers. They were hunters. The Black Guard was the most feared force in the galaxy. Silent assassins, enhanced by cybernetic implants, trained in stealth, deception, and absolute destruction. Their mission was simple: find Rain, kill her, make an example of Earth. They did not expect a fight. They should have. The Stalkers in the night. 5 Black Guard operatives landed on Earth in complete silence. Their ship had a cloaking system, and their armor absorbed all sound. No one saw them. No one heard them. They were ghosts. Their plan was simple: surround the base, locate the target, and eliminate her before she even knew they were there. But something was wrong. As soon as they landed, their equipment malfunctioned. Their comms were dead. Their scanners showed false readings. One operative, Agent Voss, tried to contact the ship. "Command, do you read? We have a problem." No response. Then, a voice came through. A woman's voice. "You should have stayed in the shadows." Then, silence. And Voss was gone. The ambush. The remaining 4 operatives spread out. Their weapons were drawn. Their cybernetic eyes scanned every shadow. There was nothing. No movement. No heat signatures. No signs of life. And then, one of them screamed. They turned in time to see a black blade slicing through armor like paper. A second agent collapsed. Blood pooled in the dirt. Rain wasn't running. She was hunting. The fight no one expected. Agent Kryn, the team leader, gritted his teeth. This was wrong. They were the Black Guard. No one could match them. And yet, 2 were already dead. He activated his thermal vision, expecting to see a human heat signature. Nothing. He switched to motion sensors. Nothing. Rain was there. and not there. Then she spoke. "Are you scared yet?" Kryn fired his weapon. A precise burst. No hesitation. His bullet never landed. Rain was already behind him. A hand grabbed his wrist, snapped it. Pain exploded in his arm. He barely had time to react before a blade pierced through his chest. His breath hitched, his vision blurred. Rain whispered in his ear, "You were never the hunter." She twisted the blade. Kryn fell. The last man standing. Only one blackguard remained. Agent Rail. He was the fastest, the strongest, the most enhanced of them all. But at that moment, he had never felt so small. He ran. Through the trees, through the night, through the silence. His heart pounded. His breath came in gasps. He activated his distress beacon. "Emergency evac. I need immediate extraction." No response. He kept running. Then he stopped. Because Rain was already in front of him. The Empire's biggest fear. Agent Rail's gun shook in his hand. "You can't be human," he whispered. Rain tilted her head, amused. "Funny," she said. "That's what the last one said." Rail raised his gun. Too slow. Rain's blade slashed across his throat. Rail dropped to his knees, eyes wide in shock. Blood soaked the earth. Rain didn't look away. She watched as the last blackguard died at her feet. Then she picked up his communicator and spoke to the Empire. The message that shook the Empire. Across the galaxy, in the Emperor's war room, commanders and officers stood in silence. A hologram flickered to life in front of them. It was Rain. Blood-stained, unbroken, smirking. And in the background, the bodies of the Blackguard. She spoke calmly. "Your best assassins are dead." The officers stiffened. She leaned forward, looking directly into the transmission. "Send more." The transmission cut out. The Emperor's response. Silence filled the war room. No one spoke. The Emperor's face was cold, unreadable. Then he stood. "We underestimated them." The room remained still. His voice turned into a low growl. "Enough of these games. Prepare the Imperial fleet. We will not send assassins. We will not send small forces. We will send our entire armée." His eyes burned with rage. "We will end Earth." Final scene. Rain stood alone on a rooftop, watching the sky. She had broken the Empire's hunters, but she knew what came next. They wouldn't stop. They would come with everything they had. And Rain smiled, because that was exactly what she wanted. The hunt was over. Now, it was time for war. The Empire's greatest warrior arrives. The name that made the Empire tremble. The Galactic Empire had never faced anything like this before. An entire elite squadron, gone. The recovery team, erased. The Blackguard, the Empire's deadliest assassins, slaughtered. The last message from Earth had been simple. Send more. For the first time in Imperial history, fears spread through the ranks. Soldiers whispered in corridors. Commanders argued in strategy rooms. The Emperor himself remained silent, deep in thought. One woman had done this. One human. And so, the Emperor made a decision. He would send General Kale. Not an army. Not a fleet. Not another squad. Just one man. Because Kale wasn't like the others. He was the Empire's champion, its greatest warrior, a legend whispered in war stories. He had crushed rebellions, hunted warlords, destroyed civilizations. And now, he was hunting her. The arrival of the war god. The Imperial dreadnought Obsidian entered Earth's orbit, a massive warship that carried only one passenger. General Kale. He did not travel with guards. He did not need them. The ship hovered over the human base, scanning the ruins of previous battles. The bodies of the Blackguard were still there, a warning to all who dared challenge Rain. Kale stepped forward to the edge of the drop bay. His armor was black, reinforced with alien metals, battle scars etched into the plating. He did not hesitate. He jumped. Falling from orbit, crashing through the sky like a meteor, his body slammed into the ground outside the base. The earth shook. Dust and fire erupted around him. And then, silence. Kale stood up, unharmed. He raised his head, and Rain was already waiting for him. The first meeting. Rain stood atop the ruined base, watching him. Her expression was unreadable. Kale studied her, a single human standing against the might of an empire. It was almost amusing. "You are the one who has caused so much trouble," Kale said, his voice deep, heavy with command. Rain tilted her head slightly, her fingers resting on the hilt of her blade. "And you're the one they sent to die next," she replied. Kale chuckled. "I expected arrogance. You are strong, but you are still human. You cannot win." Rain smirked. "Funny. That's what the last one said." Cal's hand clenched into a fist. Lightning crackled along his gauntlet. His cybernetic implants activated, energy pulsing through his armor. "Enough talk," he growled. Rain drew her blade, and the battle began. A battle that shook the earth. Kale charged, faster than any human should be, faster than anything Rain had ever fought. She barely dodged the first strike, a punch that shattered the steel wall behind her. The force alone could have turned a normal human to dust. But Rain wasn't normal. She twisted, blade flashing, aiming for his neck. Kale caught the blade with his bare hand. Rain's eyes narrowed. He grinned. "You'll have to do better than that." Then he threw her. She crashed through 3 walls before landing on her feet. Kale was already on her again. A fist came at her skull. She ducked. A kick followed. She rolled. He was stronger, but she was faster. For the first time in his life, Kale was missing his target. He roared. His armor glowed red, overcharging with power. Rain's instincts screamed, "Move." She leaped backward as the ground where she stood exploded into a crater. Smoke and dust filled the air. Kale stepped forward through the destruction, unfazed. Rain exhaled. "Not bad," she admitted. "Most people are dead by now." Kale smirked. "You aren't most people," he said. "Neither are you," Rain replied. Then she moved. The Predator versus the Titan. Rain struck first, not with brute force, but precision. A slice to the joint of Kale's armor. He dodged, but barely. A second strike aimed at his neck. Blocked. A third stab. He caught her wrist. They locked eyes. Kale tightened his grip, prepared to break her arm, but she twisted free. He swung a devastating punch. She ducked. She wasn't faster. She was reading him. Kale's amusement faded. No one had ever lasted this long against him. He stepped back, studied her stance. "You're not fighting me head-on," he muttered. Rain smiled. "Why would I?" Kale realized she was testing him. She was learning how he fought. And that's when he made his first mistake. He hesitated, just for a second. And in that second, Rain moved. The first blood. Her blade flashed. Kale barely turned in time, but not fast enough. A deep gash tore across his side. His black armor split. His blood hit the ground. Kale looked down at the wound, stunned. No one had ever wounded him before. Rain flicked the blood off her blade. "You're strong," she admitted, "but you're not invincible." Kale touched his wound. For the first time in his life, he felt pain. And for the first time in his life, he felt something else. Excitement. His grin returned. "Good," he rumbled. "Finally, a real fight." His armor glowed, repairing itself. His wounds healed instantly. Rain tensed. Now, the real battle would begin. Final scene. In the Imperial War Room, the battle played out on a holographic screen. The Emperor and his commanders watched in silence. Kale, their greatest warrior, was bleeding. For the first time, the Emperor's hand clenched into a fist. "She is more than human," one of the generals whispered. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "If Kale fails, we burn Earth to the ground." His voice was cold. No more games. The truth about Earth. A battle that shook the galaxy. For the first time in Imperial history, General Kale was bleeding. The galaxy's strongest warrior, the man who had crushed entire civilizations, had finally found a worthy opponent. And she was human. Rain stood before him, her blade dripping with his blood. She wasn't breathing heavily. She wasn't tired. She was waiting. Kale touched his wound. His armor was already repairing itself, his body regenerating. His grin returned. "Good," he rumbled. "Now we see who the real predator is." He charged. Faster, stronger, every movement now calculated, controlled. This was no longer a fight. This was a war. The sky burns. As Kale and Rain clashed, the Imperial fleet arrived. Hundreds of warships, thousands of soldiers. The Emperor was done playing games. "Destroy the planet," he ordered. Missiles rained from the sky, aimed at Earth's major cities. The Empire would erase this world before it could become a true threat. But then, something happened. The missiles stopped. Mid-air. Frozen. As if something, someone, was holding them in place. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. What trick is this? Then the screens flickered. A voice echoed through the command center. "You should have left us alone." And the missiles turned. Right back at the fleet. The Empire's greatest secret. Deep within the Imperial archives, there were forbidden files. Files even high-ranking officers were not allowed to read. But today, one scientist, Dr. Saris, was given full access. The Emperor had ordered her to find out what Earth was. She had spent hours scanning, searching, uncovering truths hidden for centuries. And now, she was terrified. Her hands trembled as she rushed to the Emperor's war chamber. She barely caught her breath before she spoke the words that shook the Empire. Earth was never supposed to exist. The room fell silent. The Emperor's eyes burned into her. "Explain." Dr. Saris swallowed hard. Earth is not just another planet. It was an experiment, a secret project by the ancients. The Emperor's face darkened. The ancients, the long-extinct race that had once ruled the stars. They designed something on Earth, Dr. Saris continued. A new species, a species that was never meant to leave, never meant to be found. The Emperor's voice was cold. "Why?" Dr. Saris's voice trembled. "Because the humans were their final creation. The ultimate predator. The ancients had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They were creators, engineers of life. They had built countless species, shaped civilizations, and designed entire ecosystems. But before they vanished, they had one last project. Humans. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the fastest. They weren't the smartest. But they were something far worse. They could adapt. Where other species evolved over millennia, humans learned in days. Where other species feared death, humans embraced it. They did not have fangs or claws. They had strategy, cunning, relentless will. And above all, they never stopped fighting. The ancients had hidden them on Earth, away from the stars, because they feared what their creation could become. But now, the Empire had woken the beast, and it was too late. The final moments of General Kale. Back on Earth, the battle raged on. Kale and Rain were evenly matched. Every strike, every counter, every dodge. Kale was the strongest warrior in the galaxy. But Rain was something else. She was the future. Kale began to slow. His wounds took longer to heal. His vision blurred. Rain's attacks never stopped, never slowed. For the first time in his life, Kale felt fear. "You're not human," he gasped. Rain's blade pressed against his throat. She smiled. "I am human." And with a single swift motion, she ended him. The Empire's greatest warrior fell, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Empire's last move. The Emperor watched Kel die. His champion, his war god, dead. His hands shook with rage. "Enough," he whispered. His generals turned to him, awaiting orders. The Emperor stood and spoke two words that would decide the fate of the galaxy. "Burn Earth." Final scene. Rain stood on a mountain, looking at the sky. Hundreds of Imperial ships hovered above, preparing to fire. The full force of the most powerful empire in the galaxy was aimed at one planet. Rain exhaled. This was it. The final battle. The last stand of humanity. She gripped her blade, and she smiled. "Come and try." The end, or the beginning. The final hour of humanity. The Galactic Empire had ruled for over 1,000 years. They had crushed civilizations, burned planets, erased species, and now they had made their greatest mistake. They had waged war against Earth, against humanity, against Commander Rain. And now, the entire Imperial Armada, thousands of warships, millions of soldiers, hovered over the blue planet, preparing to unleash total annihilation. The Emperor himself had spoken. Burn Earth. This was the moment that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The moment where humanity would either fall or rise. Rain stood on the highest peak, staring at the sky. Above her, the stars were no longer beautiful. They were filled with death. She gripped her blade, and she smiled. "Let's finish this." The first strike. The Empire did not wait. They did not hesitate. They fired. 1,000 plasma cannons, 10,000 missile barrages, a rain of fire and destruction, enough to turn Earth into ash. The end of an entire species in seconds. The Imperial commanders watched the screens. They waited for the explosions. They waited for Earth to be erased. But the fire never landed, because the sky fought back. The missiles, the plasma, the destruction meant to end humanity. It stopped. No, it turned. Every single projectile reversed course, straight back at the Empire. Boom. The first explosion ripped through the lead battleship. Then another, and another. The Empire's own weapons were tearing through their fleet. Admirals screamed orders. Pilots panicked. The Imperial Armada, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, was in chaos. And then, they came. The humans strike back. For centuries, the Empire had believed humans were weak. For centuries, they had ignored Earth, thinking it unimportant. They were wrong, because Earth had been watching, learning, preparing. And now, humanity's hidden fleet, ships built in secret, faster, deadlier, more advanced than anything the Empire had ever faced, broke through the clouds. Sleek black vessels designed for war. Weapons designed to kill gods. They had never needed to reveal their power. Until now. And at the front of it all, Rain, her personal warship, the Revenant, cut through the Imperial fleet like a blade through flesh. Human pilots, once thought primitive, outmaneuvered the Empire's best. Earth's soldiers, trained for this moment, boarded enemy ships, slaughtering entire crews. For the first time, the hunters had become the hunted, and the Empire was afraid. The Emperor's last move. The Emperor watched the battle unfold. He saw his fleet being ripped apart, his empire, his legacy, crumbling. He clenched his fists. "This is not possible," he whispered. His commanders trembled. "We should retreat," one of them suggested. The Emperor's eyes burned. "Retreat." His voice was cold, filled with venom. "After everything we've done, you expect me to run from humans?" Silence. Then he made his final decision. "Prepare the doomsday device." The command room fell silent. The doomsday device, a planet-killing weapon, the last resort of the Empire, a weapon forbidden even among their own kind. But now, the Emperor had no choice. "Target Earth," he ordered. "If I cannot rule this galaxy, then no one will." The final battle. Rain's forces tore through the Empire's fleet. Warships fell like dying stars, crashing into the planet below. But then she saw it. A massive warship, unlike any other. Bigger than cities. The Doomsday device. And it was charging. Rain's breath slowed. If it fired, everything was over. Not just Earth. Not just humanity. The entire solar system would burn. Rain made her decision. "All forces, follow me," she commanded. The Revenant blasted forward, straight into the heart of death. Rain versus the Emperor. The Imperial Palace ship was crumbling. Rain and her team boarded it. They tore through guards, broke past defenses, fought their way to the throne room. And there, at the end of the Grand Hall, the Emperor waited. He was old, but he was not weak. His armor hummed with ancient energy. His eyes glowed like burning suns. "You are nothing," he told her. Rain stepped forward. "Funny," she said. "That's what they all said." The doors sealed, and the final battle began. The end, or the beginning. The fight was unlike anything in history. Blades clashed. Sparks flew. The Emperor was a monster. His power shattered walls. His strikes could tear planets apart. But Rain was worse. She adapted. She learned. She countered. She won. And in the final moment, as the Emperor gasped his last breath, he whispered, "You were always meant to rule." Rain didn't answer. She just watched him die. And then she activated the Doomsday device's core. Not to destroy Earth, but to destroy the Empire. 1 year later, the Galactic Empire was no more. Its fleets were scattered. Its rulers were dead. Its people, free. And Earth had risen. Not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as the new power of the galaxy. And at its head, the legend that had shaken the stars. Commander Rain. Her name was now whispered across the universe. Some feared her. Some worshipped her. But one thing was clear. The galaxy was hers now. And humanity had just begun.